Savage Dragon 96 from February of 2002, creator controlled. We're on the way to a landmark issue 100, but this may be one of the most consequential of the entire series thus far. Just an excellent comic from front to back. We got drama, action, humor, and some meta commentary on the comics industry. So let's get into it. We always start with the credits. Erik Larsen, writer and artist. Chris Eliopoulos, letterer. Ruben Root and Abel Motown, colors. And Josh Eckhorn is like Disco Superfly, a reference to a lyric from the song Sex and Candy by Marcy Playground. So please tell me your favorite Marcy Playground song besides Sex and Candy. Just post in the comments. I'm sure there's going to be a long list of bangers in there. So moving on, Savage Dragon attempts to escape from the void. As you recalled last issue, Dragon entered the void in search of the daughter of Rex Dexter, Lexi Dexter, and the protege Sterling Macing. So Dragon found her in this nest of bubbles, bubbles that he would also be captured by. And now we see that he's got Lexi and he's trying to escape their prison, which he does, revealing this wild-ass double-page spread. You know, what the hell is going on here? Freak Force is battling some space mutants. Mako is gnawing on this dude's head. Madness, but I love it. This is Larsen at his best, you know, really giving you an eyeful to look at. Every inch of this page has something going on, including up here. Got this little planet with the face on it. Maybe a funny little hat tip to Ego the Living Planet. But this is way more than a throwaway gag. This is Glum World, the home of Mr. Glum, who will make his appearance in the not-too-distant future. So, Dragon is confused about the sudden appearance of his allies, but he continues the mission at hand. So he commandeers this kind of convertible spacecraft from out of nowhere. And then he remembers that there were two missing persons. So he swings back around to go scoop up Sterling Macing, or who he thinks is Sterling Macing. Big mistake there. Anyway, this really pisses off this insect-faced guy named Death Seed, and he says he's going to make the dragon pay. So the good guys all start to make their escape when Dragon is told that it has been, he's been in Dimension X for 2 years. It had only seemed like hours to the dragon, but Rex Dexter had warned him that the time works differently in the void. And now this, so he's missed 2 years of his life here. He's freaked out. And this is kind of a cheat for Larsen here, because he likes to keep his comic in real time. So if a year passes in the real world, then a year passes in Dragon time. But in the Savage world, which had, you know, been going on since issue 76, about 2 years ago, the real-time continuity had kind of gotten lost a little bit. And so this plot development kind of has caught Dragon up a couple of years. And it also saved Larsen the burden of having to, like, rebuild the Savage world back to normal. There was all just, you know, kind of crazy shit going on down there, but now it appears much more familiar to the original Savage Dragon universe. So, all right, the good guys return home through the portal that Rex Dexter has built, and he's finally glad to see his daughter back. Hooray. But then tragically, Lexi starts to puke up these giant red slugs. It's gross. And the dragon smashes them. But this is the demise of Lexi Dexter. So what a loss. Years spent trying to recover this girl. And then when they finally do, she just vomits up worms and dies. It's a terrible time for Barbaric to enter the room and announce that the pizza has been delivered. So anyway, Dragon gets checked up on to make sure he's not about to puke up slugs. And he passes the physical. And then Frank Darling gives him some updates. So the dude that he picked up was not Sterling Mason, but it's some other John Doe or Ben Blank in this case. And he'll apparently just work in Rex Dexter's lab in the meantime. And then Dragon finds out that George W. Bush was elected president. The end. It's 10 pages. So what's going on here, man? Larsen has split this comic into 3 separate stories. So this is kind of a retro Golden Age approach to comics with multiple stories by different creative teams, or the exact same creative team in this case. The Killing Machine. We're back on Vanguard's ship. And keep in mind, you know, this happened like 2 years ago, but Wally has killed Cyberface. Once again, in last issue, we saw that Cyberface had taken control of Wally and used him to free himself. But now it turns out that Wally was able to resist the control, and he used a laser just to blast off Cyberface's head. And Vanguard's a little apprehensive about this. He's like, we were supposed to keep that prisoner alive, but ultimately he decides it was for the best, and probably unavoidable. So they decide to teleport his corpse onto the surface of the sun for a permanent end. Voila. Next is the Creator. This is our cover story here. And first, Dragon and Frank, they admire a new statue that the city of Chicago has erected in honor of the Savage Dragon, savior of the world. And this one looks a lot better than the previous statue that we saw in issue 62. Or, no, 64. Yeah, they think they did a better job on the new one. Anyway, also notice the date on this. September the 3rd, 2001. 2 weeks before the September 11 attack. So again, Eric playing with the time on this narrative. And rarely does he give like a specific date like that. So he's up to something there. So a crowd gathers, attracted by this celebrity, the Savage Dragon. That's what they all call him, Savage Dragon. And he's kind of confused. He's like, why are they all calling me that? And apparently Frank says, some reporter used that moniker, and it just kind of stuck. So that is that. They leave the adoring crowd and continue their sightseeing tour, while Dragon notices a familiar building. And I thought this was maybe something from issue 76, where Dragon falls into this pit with these spiders. Did I just lose the page? Whatever. Anyway, he falls in this pit with these. I'm not even sure if this is the same one. It could just be Red Bear's old hideout, so that's a waste of my time. Anyway, he falls through the floor, and pure insanity ensues. This is the Creator, formerly Johnny Redbeard, winner of the MODOK lookalike contest. And he's not happy about an intruder dropping in, so he sicks his creations onto the Dragon. First, we got the medieval Sandman and his sister, Death Angel, behind him, obviously taking some shots at Neil Gaiman, who had recently sued Todd McFarlane for the rights to Angela and won. So Larson has made his opinions public about, Gaiman's claims to Angela and medieval Spawn. He thought they were pretty bogus because they were just derivative of other pre-existing characters and not wholly original creations, as stated by Sandman there. And look, we got Spawn in the background. Or I'm sorry, this is postmodern Spawn back there. Followed up by the ever-loving, blue-eyed Bad Thing, an amalgam of Badrock and the Thing. So this is a twofer. Larson gets to poke fun at his buddy Rob Liefeld and their former employer, Marvel Comics. So it's slugging time, indeed. All right, then he faces Ultimate Arachnid, which is getting very meta. So Arachnid was a early villain from back in the miniseries. Still one of the most wild-looking characters and probably the most badass double-page spread in the entire series. But anyways, Arachnid was kind of a metaphor for Marvel Comics that Dragon calls fat and lazy from years of feeding off of these children. And now this goofy Ultimate Arachnid with the Harry Potter glasses. This really gives Larson the opportunity to lay it on thick. So just listen to this speech. You're all pathetic imitations of somebody else. Your fantastic forgeries are overrunning the place. These nitwits are so plentiful that they outnumber their counterparts, overwhelming the original heroes. It looks like your creations have done their damage. The sheer volume of cheap products has caused your factory to collapse. Your beloved industry is finished, and you're the cause. So, Larson, not a fan of subtext, just text. And, the commentary here is kind of a time for sure, because the early 2000s were a much rougher period for comics than today. And I would argue it gets worse from this point on, actually. So Larson's pessimism was valid. And it's also tongue-in-cheek, because just as the Creator's warehouse collapses and the Dragon escapes, there's a familiar figure emerging from the wreckage there. That is Flash Mercury, another version of the Dragon, and from Larson's childhood, basically, that fans had only seen sketches of, but they were familiar with. So while Larson is criticizing others with this story, he makes it clear that he's doing the same fucking thing here, so don't take him too seriously. I laughed at it. And man, I love this issue. Like, truly consequential. That 2-year jump, undeniably controversial. That's a move you just can't undo. Or can you? You know, who knows what's going to happen in this comic? Only gets weirder from here, so hold on to your butts. On to Fanatics. Not a lot to say from Larson, just the usual numbered list of questions from the usual freaks, like Olav Beamer, who is pissed off about the spoilers on the back cover. So, yeah, you know, Larson puts these 4-issue advertisements on the back showing off the covers from the next 4 issues. Olav does not appreciate that. So Larson says that most fans do. And don't worry, they're going away after issue 100. And actually, I think issue 95 was like the last one they put it on anyway, so no more complaining. What else we got here? Yeah, Ryan from Brooklyn asked, you know, what other creators have done as many consecutive comics as you? And Larson replies, in terms of solo efforts, Sheldon Meyer wrote and drew 98 consecutive issues of Sugar and Spike, plus an issue that was published years later. Dave Sim wrote and drew 62 issues of Cerebus solo, and he's done over 200 consecutive issues with Garrett. And then Stan Sakai has done over 100 issues of Usagi Yojimbo, but not consecutively. And however, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby did 102 consecutive issues of Fantastic Four. Sergio Aragonis and Mark Evanier perpetrated 120 consecutive issues of Gru the Wanderer over at Marvel and Epic. And there must be others, but nothing else comes to mind. There have been a number of writers who stayed on for books longer with a rotating artist, and there have been artists who have stayed on books with a succession of other writers. But if the competition is boiled down to simply who's written, penciled, and inked the most consecutive issues by themselves, Sheldon Meyer seems to be the guy to beat. End quote. So, you know, this is less than 100 issues and 10 years in. Since then, you know, Larson has blown past these guys. But it's always nice to kind of take stock of the achievement that Larson has achieved. That's, you know, a legendary and short list that he finds himself on. So, rarefied air. Moving on to Image Insider. There's a lot of ink for this new series, Athena Ink. Issue 1 is listed on the top of the release checklist, and then there's an interview with its creator, Brian Haberlin. But I'm mostly interested in this Understanding Image, Part 5, Submit to the Mighty Eye. So there have been tips for creators looking to produce an image comic, and this is the submission guidelines. So I'll just read this thing. Okay, first things first. We aren't looking for writing, penciling, inking submissions, etc. As you may have gleaned from the previous installments of this feature, we have nothing to do with the creative side of things. Publishing is our thing, not editing. What we want to see is how your work looks as a comic. The whole package. If we were picking your book up off the comic shelf, what would we see drawn, inked, and lettered pages? Wait, what the hell? We want a proposal. Coloring is optional, but it helps the closer your book is to its finished form. Better yet, once you have a finished book, send it, but 10 pages will work. We also want you to tell us what sets your book apart. Telling us that your book is the next big thing and that your mother loves it will not convince us. We want to know what kind of demographic you're going for. X-Men readers, Powerpuff Girl readers. Give us a cover letter that fills us in on what you're going for. A mini-series, ongoing, etc. But keep it to the point. We're not looking for any specific genre. We're looking for quality and originality. Please don't send originals because we won't send them back. Copies only, please. And for those of you who might be worried about keeping control of your work, you haven't read the previous editions of this column. Image owns exactly 0 intellectual properties, so don't worry about us stealing it. And submissions can be sent to the address at the top of the page. Attention to Jim Valentino. So if you think you have what it takes, now you know the rules. Get moving and show us what you got. Good luck. So pretty straightforward. I think that's pretty much how it works today, except for the Jim Valentino part. Savage Tales by Nick Darrington. This one features Powerhouse going on a TV show, The Mega Mystery Date. He's set up on a blind date that doesn't go too well. Got Comic Bits by Chris Giarrusso. G-Man and his gang are back at school, but none of them did the required reading. So when they're asked to write an essay and explain the book, they pretend that they've heard a crime going on in the distance, and they burst out of the classroom. And then instead of using the opportunity to go and read their assignment, they just go to a movie matinee. That's pretty fun. Dragonbert by Carl H. Usual bits of wit and cameos Got E.T. the Extraterrestrial and John Byrne down there. But that will do it for this one. We got a nice image of the Savage Dragon bust by Claiborne Moore. Next is She-Dragon in issue 97. Adios.